And I remember seeing these young Marines running with all their bags to go load up the truck and head on up to the airport. And just, it stuck in my head.
A year has passed since 13 American service members were killed in one of the deadliest losses of life since the 20-year war on terrorism began. We're commemorating that today, and we have a special guest with us, one who was actually part of that pullout and set to an undisclosed location that we're not going to talk about in Kuwait to stage for that pullout. I'd like to introduce Staff Sergeant Rob Greco, currently in the United States Army Reserve active. So one of the big issues that we all thought about were those 13 service members killed. And I think that a lot of Americans don't understand the ripple effect of those 13 deaths. And while that's tragic to those individuals, there is an effect that continues on and on, even years later, on other service members, not to mention the service members' families as well. And I'd like you, in your own words, to talk about what it was like to actually be involved with these individuals prior to the evacuation, and what your feelings were afterwards.
Well, first off, these are my personal experiences and opinions. It's not a DOD representation. So I was in Jordan at the time, and I got pulled to Kuwait to assist with this. And they kind of clumped everybody all together on this base. There was overcrowdedness happening all over. And I happened to be in the area of the Marines, and they are QRF for this event. So for me, as a senior guy in the Army, I have a lot of young soldiers that I've led. And I was looking at these young Marines, anticipating, excited, ready to go do what they've been training to do. And I watched these guys, every night, just sitting around, waiting, just pumped up, excited. And to me, they're all kids. Granted, they may be of 19 years of age. I'm 36. I still think of them as like teenage kids. And I remember a week prior to this, they got their call. And I remember seeing these young Marines running with all their bags to go load up the truck and head on up to the airport. And just, it stuck in my head because, I seen my guys with the same glint in their eyes, excited to go overseas, excited to go do the mission they wanted to do. And to know that these kids were running out there super excited, had no clue they were going to die a few days later and not go home. And these are guys that I dealt with passing by in the living area, in the bathrooms, hearing them talk. Sounds weird. I'm in the shower and I hear them chit-chatting about, this is so cool, doing this, doing that, pumped up, excited, asking their sergeants who are also showering, like, tactics and other maneuvers, anything to get better. Guys were excited. They were pumped up. And the feeling after the event happened, seeing the bags laid outside, seeing the depressed looks on their teams, like everybody was depressed. It was, their friends just died. The guy, their bunkmate, however their living status was in their building, they're done. They were fucking warped at the time. And I could see it on their face. It wasn't exciting in the bathroom talk. It was, it was quiet and then emotional. Guys would stay up all night. And I can attest to that. It's hard to sleep, especially if you're dealing with picking up your friend. So it was just, for me, looking at this now, watching the before and the after, I could feel for these kids. And I'm like, they have a world to go through now that is going to look completely different than what it was prior to what happened. Before, everything was great. Go out, it's like the movie, and then you come back and it's, the part of the movies they don't show. So for me, witnessing this highlight, this downfall of all of them in a sense, and I mean, I hope now they're all doing better and learned a way to cope and move on a bit, but they're never going to forget that.
Do you think that movies like Top Gun, which is, an American classic, and now with the remake, and the pilots and the warriors come back from combat, and they're have this, it's always a victory, and it's always high fives and all this amazing camaraderie, and that's not real life? And do you think that has an effect, when a mission goes sideways, like the withdrawal in Afghanistan? Do you think that because we're conditioned to think that everything is always going to be fantastic with a great ending, and all of a sudden it doesn't go the way we planned, and you've been conditioned to expect success, and then all of a sudden you don't have it? Do you think that played an effect on the trauma that, okay, we're talking about the ones who were killed, their time is over, but what about the ones who were their teammates?
From my personal experience coming out of Somalia in 2019, we had an action-packed time. We left burned out. We had our experience, and we felt we made a difference. A few months later, there was another attack in the region that killed a soldier, and the president of the time shut it all down. He pulled everybody out. The base I was at in Somalia was demolished and turned over to the Somali forces. So for me, going through that, similar to the Afghanistan withdrawal, of guys who have put their lives on the line and did all this work there only to just see it go away, for me, Somalia gave me an experience of that, because I did all this shit there, and now it's gone, it's over with. And I'm like, oh my, why did I go? Why did I experience what I experienced? Why did we get this close to death multiple times for it to just be a waste? And now recently I'm told they're going back to try to recapture the whole area, and it was like, we had it. It's just back and forth. So, and looking at this, again, my opinion, it seems like they're going to want to go back. So I'm sure these troops are we just went there to do this, do that, and then done and over with. Like it never happened. And you go home, there's no victory parade. There's nobody's, celebrating you. You're not pictures on the wall, streamers everywhere. Like, you go back to life, and you go back as if nothing ever happened.
And what was it all for?
Exactly.
So let's talk a little bit more about that, because I know, you went through a very difficult time coming back, and it's probably due to the fact that we do these things repeatedly. I mean, there's been comparisons drawn between the pullout in Saigon, Vietnam, back in the early 70s, and where we leave and things go back to the way they were before we ever got there, except we have holes now in our society. We have the loss of lives. We have the loss of husbands and wives and sons and daughters and brothers and sisters. And when you see things go back to the way they were, what was it all for? Now you've experienced that twice. How did you feel personally, and how did you deal with coming back from the Middle East and seeing everything that was accomplished turn back to the way it was before?
It's something I've learned to accept, because I have no other choice but to accept it. With the Africa issue, it's what opened my eyes to it. I mean, I came home, and then I had my best friend die right after, and I had COVID start. So the world I came back to wasn't even there. And then I go on the second deployment right through the end of 2020 through November 2021. And I witnessed almost a similar event now, and then I came home and, things are a little bit better, but there's a lot of conflict and issues at home with things you see on TV and stuff. But I learned to accept what happened in the past. I can't do nothing about that.
So many of our soldiers and warriors in this country are turning to suicide in these situations. I mean, the rate now is just astronomical. Most people are completely unaware that 2 times the number killed in 9/11, which we actually have a Remembrance Day every year. There's 2 times that many that take their own lives every single year of veterans who cannot cope with the issues that we're dealing with. And I think that maybe there's something that you can give to our audience that would help them understand what it is like to go through that, and how you can pull yourself up and change your thought process from that dark negative back to positive.
So for me, things got very dark, and I was coming close to being a part of the statistic. What happened for me, and this might not happen for others, is I went on another deployment. I got pretty close to ending it. It didn't happen. Wrecked the car. Kind of, let me give this deployment I'm going on a shot, because the soldiers now that are looking up to me should be able to have a leader that lives up to the NCO creed at least.
Once you finish a deployment and you're no longer with those people, and especially as a reservist, you now have to become a citizen again, a civilian, without all of your buddies, without that support system. And that's a completely different situation than active duty soldiers who, even when they come back from deployment, are in garrison with their buddies.
Yeah.
And they have time to decompress. You don't have that time.
No. Having done this, I did a few tours that were non-combat related to Eastern Europe, and I felt the difference there, because I came back from Romania and it was like right back to work. I'm like, oh, okay. Come back from Somalia, right back to work. And then from this, I quit my job, but I didn't go right back to work. But it was still, hey, go. Revert back into society as if nothing ever happened, and just fit back in. And it's hard to fit in.
How do you deal with that?
It was awkward. It was completely
had to be.
awkward. I didn't know how to interact with people, because what could I talk about? HR ain't gonna like if I open my mouth, and some of these people don't want to hear about it, and then some do, and some think it's the action movie, or some just think you went and did nothing. So it was a weird fine line to cross. But then I just sat there quietly some days, like, I have nothing to relate. I don't know about entertainment news, and I don't even know what the hell happened here the past year. So
you're totally not with the Kardashians
No,
at that
no,
point.
no.
No.
No, I had no clue.
So when I first met you, that was back in 2016, and we were just on the infancy of Grey Team. And I remember that you had come out for an event and brought some soldiers with you and some military equipment. And we kind of touched base on what Grey Team was going to be about. And I think at that time, you had none of the issues that you're dealing with now. You were a little bit more optimistic. You hadn't been through the ringer like you have now. So I guess my first question to you is, what made you finally, we stayed in contact on all your deployments, but there was a time period where you went through some very, very dark stuff. And what was the breaking point where you realized that you couldn't do it on your own, and you actually could benefit from Grey Team?
So when we first met, I was doing those 5Ks. I was doing some tours of Eastern Europe, doing random events around the country too, trainings and whatever other things that arose. So I began a spiral, and was
Understandable.
not. Now I went from sleeping and having dreams to maybe sleeping 4 hours a week, because what's the point in sleeping? And I was all over the place. It was like, yeah, I go to work, but I'm not. The lights are on, nobody's home, type of deal. Just skirting through, lay down in bed, have an experience, jump up, and then that's it. Stay up the rest of the night.
Of course.
And that's when I decided, when I get home, I should probably pay you a visit and see what's going on here.
Well, we're very, very happy that you did. And I just have to say that you've been through an incredible amount, and it's an honor to be able to write and steady the craft that you're traveling in, because most of us, we have one or two of those experiences, and yours are like this. And I think that you've been through a lot, and yet you always are able to stay positive and cling on to that life rope of hope that things are going to get better. I think that Gray Team is better with you here, and some of your abilities to stay positive are going to rub off on quite a few other Marines and soldiers that are going through something very, very similar. And I believe it's the camaraderie that brings us all with a common purpose together, and together we can fix this. I would love for you to actually talk about some of your experiences here and how it has, in fact, kept you on that continuous positive track that you've managed to put your life back on.
So since coming here in the beginning, I was a little bit like, oh, what is this? What do you guys want? What do I gotta jump through? But I saw it wasn't like that. It wasn't hassling me or anything. He gave me free run of the gym, and to me that alone helped, because it felt like a military. Don't want to say fully like a military installation, because that would suck. But it felt like the camaraderie was in the area, and you could feel, hey, you're not gonna get yelled at, and it's not an old person's UFIT or anything, where you go, you work out, but you don't have any connection to anybody, or
Right.
there's no support system. It's just business. So coming here, doing that, going through the saunas and all the other experiences you have here, I was like, oh my God, this is a mental stimulant that I didn't expect, as well as a physical one that, I look forward to getting here. Even though I drag in the morning, I look forward to getting it done. And that right there alone gave me something, I have to do this. And there's people there that will yell at me if I don't do it.
And would you feel comfortable bringing the Gray Team experience to some of your soldiers? And especially as a staff sergeant, you have a complete, leadership role. And when you see someone struggling, what would you want to tell them about Gray Team?
I actually have been pushing this out. I have heard of one of the soldiers I recently deployed with going through some issues. I have sent him all the info. I mean, I can't force him here because of what he's going through. I don't want to overextend myself, but I've been pushing it out to everybody. Like, even ones that aren't on this side of Florida, like, hey, when you come through, take a stop here, even if it's for 1 or 2 times. I'm pushing it out like crazy, because to me, I feel it worked. My mental focus and thoughts are no longer drifting away as they were before. Because when I came home, I didn't think I was in a bad position, but I wasn't really doing much. I was just kind of sitting around like I'm some retired 80-year-old guy, and I was like, this ain't too good.
Rob, I know you've shared a lot of really heartfelt stuff, and I want to thank you for talking with us today. I think that, sometimes being able to let some of that out is extremely helpful. And I know that, most of us, because we're men, we tend to not want to share those things because that implies weakness. But it's almost requires a lot more strength to be able to dig that up and put it out there. It implies a certain amount of vulnerability, and you have to be very strong to make yourself vulnerable. So I want to thank you for your service. I want to thank you for coming to Gray Team and allowing us to serve you. It's been an honor, and we so appreciate everything that you've done.
Thank you. Thank you for the support.
If you're a veteran or current service member, we want to really reach out to you. And if you're experiencing any of the issues that we've talked about today, you owe it to yourself and your family and anyone else who relies on you to not keep it on your shoulders, but to come to Gray Team and allow us the honor of taking care of you, because that's what our mission is. And we want to do everything we possibly can to get you out of these dark places and bring you back to the positive, sunny side of life. Thanks so much for all of your continued support, and we'll see you soon.